were over at their house, and he like brought it up. He's like, Cooper's being a little fucking asshole. Da 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 da. And I was like, so what are you doing about it? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you're his uncle. Are you gonna let him be a little asshole? Are you gonna let him grow up to be a little shit in the world, or are you gonna do something about it? And he's like, I never thought about that. I could actually which he's a bright guy, and he's very personable, and this people like him automatically.
Look at this bullshit. So you got to see this, because no one fucking believes me when I talk about this shit. So I just hop on this motherfucker, and for some reason I can't fucking highlight over. This motherfucker's doing right to left. Does this ever do this with you? Like,
it's doing right to left.
Look.
Oh yeah, I have seen that actually. You're on the insert.
What do you mean insert?
Insert.
This?
That button. Yeah.
No.
Well, that's what that is. Is if you highlight and then hit the insert button, then it inserts like that. So hit the backspace or the delete button, and it should turn off the insert mode. The delete button. So go out here.
Oh, let me go like.
Yeah, I'm running the time. Yeah, that's normal.
This is some fucking bullshit.
That's on insert mode.
What do you mean insert mode? It's on Arabic mode?
No, I mean, it's literally insert mode is what it is. I don't know why that particular thing is on insert mode.
No. Insert mode is you're able to overwrite something.
Invert mode is an action that allows users to insert text without overwriting other text.
That doesn't make sense.
Well, that's literally what it's doing, right? It's inserting text.
No, it's writing backwards.
No, your just insert point is at the front. You're inserting where the cursor is.
Who the fuck writes back? This is backwards, bastard. It's going fucking backwards.
I'll try
backwards writing.
Typing backwards solution. That's funny.
Shift left arrow.
Okay, that's fucking weird.
Definitely.
Does that start it or stop it? The shift left arrow.
This is fucking crazy. Control shift. I didn't need
Okay.
control shift. Caps lock on.
I was gonna say delete the box and then see what you get. It's gonna hurt himself all that stuff.
I can't fucking delete it.
You can't delete the rest of it?
No.
Oh, because you can't move the cursor?
No.
Alright, I'm gonna blame your program then.
This is fucking crazy.
Instead of blaming your...
Alright, let's just get out of Safari all fucking together. See?
Yeah, totally fine. Anywhere else?
Hacked by Arabic people. There we go.
Yes, when in doubt, get out.
Alright, let's do this.
Alright.
Oh my gosh. Woo. Doing those pull-ups yesterday, wow. And they're like assisted, and it was going, I haven't done pull-ups in like a little while.
I was gonna say, how long has it been since you did pull-ups?
Too long. And not only did I do pull-ups, but I did like to max.
Yeah.
Multiple times to max. Check. Okay, so the audio was on. So they're bitching and complaining about the Arabic text like a million times.
Yes, you shouldn't edit that out.
Coffee?
Damn
Or
computers.
I already
bacon?
took a bunch.
Okay.
It's all you. It's all your bacon.
Jay, here we are.
Yes, filming. Now that we're done talking.
I put that up there. I don't know if you saw it.
The clock?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did. I was looking at that. Kind of cool. I guess good for your time checks. How long you've gone?
Yeah. Thing's pretty nice. You can hit that thing and just like go.
So, I don't know if you want this on here, but the uncle thing is just, you know, if you're in a child's life and you could cause it to, there not to be another asshole in the world by intervening and maybe directing that child in a new direction.
Yeah. Well,
maybe you should do that.
Somebody was mentioning, no, it was I think it was Daniel yesterday actually. He was talking about another big thing that he was talking about was tolerance of sin.
Yeah.
Which is very related to that.
It is.
And that you tolerate sin and then you get like more of it and you get all this like craziness.
Yeah.
It is funny how these things all like intertwine.
Yeah. You can use your standard garden metaphor, which is, you know, if you let the weeds grow up in the garden.
Oh yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, oh, it's just a little seed. Oh, it's just a tiny little weed in the corner.
Yeah, so is it. So, so is like a, the hell is it? A winter squash seed. Next thing you know, you got like a 40-foot vine
been taken over
with gigantic freaking fruits on it, with millions of seeds ready to drop.
Yeah. Well, that's another reason it's a good metaphor. It's like
the seeds. I mean, it's
as soon as that weed plant becomes mature, it's going to drop a shit ton of seeds.
Well, the funny thing is kind of the day and age we live in is how many people don't know anything about that.
True.
And, you know, I really hate those stupid videos on YouTube that talk about, like, you know, where they're... I saw one that I had seen before that they've done every now and again where the guy is trying to get somebody to trade whatever item they have for a gold coin, and they won't do it.
Yeah.
And so it's supposed to be this narrative, oh, people are too stupid.
Sure, they're a candy bar or an ounce of gold.
Yeah. It's like, I don't trust that. It's like, well, we can go to this pawn shop right here. And it's like, I'm not crazy about those, but I will definitely say, from actual experience of talking to people, most people have no fucking idea how food's grown at all.
That's true. Yeah.
Like, they have no idea that, like, it's just so wild. They might say, like, sure, maybe it's grown from seed, but, like, it's not anything smarter than that. Like, that it produces a fruit that has seed in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even to that extent. Or, you know, you're talking about weeds. They couldn't identify a weed to save their life.
Yeah.
In fact, many of the places that, like, I've been, there's not even weeds in any of the fake plants that are out in the yard anywhere. It's just these bushes that are in permanent stasis. To me, those plants are crazy because it's like, if you're around there and it's like, oh, these are the green spaces. Like, these green spaces, no one even knows the name of any of these plants, and they have no purpose.
Yeah. I think you probably need to get people to garden, though, because I can't come up with a better metaphor. There's like no modern metaphor.
No, there's not.
Equivalent. Because it's the thing about the seeds and the weeds in the garden is the fact that the longer you ignore them, the worse they get, which is what makes it such a powerful thing. So it's like, you know, in inner objects that we create, if you just let them sit there, they just sit there. They don't change. They don't get any worse.
They do get worse, actually. All static things they degrade.
Yes, but it's a very slow degradation, whereas the weed actually gets stronger and takes over time.
Oh yeah, I mean, no, biological. I mean, I can't remember who made this argument, and it is this argument, and how impactful it is that it might have actually been Alan Savory that was talking about, okay, you know, you got these places out in Africa, or these brittle places with like these giant grass. No, it was not Alan Savory, but it is sort of relevant. But long story short, the difference between something that's living and non-living is their arc of, you know, the nature of the health of the thing. And living things get bigger and grow over time, and everything that's ever been produced that's a static thing always decays into something else, into some lesser form. And so when we make a tripod,
it's just deformed by entropy.
Yeah, entropy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the right way to call it. Is affected by entropy, and it is not clear that biological life works like that. In fact, as you said, it keeps putting on seeds, and the moment you forget, so to say, or you're not out there vigilant to go do the thing, it's still doing its thing. But the funny thing is, like, let's get real here. This is the part that I love about, just anything biological life. Dude, that's happening even with, like, human beings.
Yeah.
So while the internet is out there pontificating about what the state of all things are, they're not even close to correct. And this is probably why the mainstream media and all that gets it so far off, is because it's so constrained. It's like this kind of boxed thinking that only happens, and it's all that they call it groupthink, right? It's these echo chambers. And what is that? It's this kind of stale corporate think.
Yeah, the original work on groupthink that was done in the 70s. I've been trying to get a hold of those, like the original books.
Yeah.
And they all sell for like $500.
Oh yeah, sure.
They're all out of print. You can't get them, and it's like, so what, we're trying to encourage groupthink? We can't do like a second run of those and like pass them out so people recognize this stuff? Or are we purposefully trying to create it? It's because all those books were written for that purpose, is to reduce the amount of groupthink that was going on.
I need to read this book that you gave me, the games people play, because I feel like this set of books plays games.
Yeah.
That's the business books.
Yes. Yeah.
And
it's all about getting your little edge.
They drive me crazy, to be perfectly honest, because the funny thing is putting it in here, I wouldn't categorize my books, and so I have business here, basically finance, just pure money as it gets up top.
Right.
Then I have a specifically leadership shelf that's just like, it has leadership in the title, something related to that, or it's like teams, groups, that kind of stuff. Then I have a section on like influence, like as much as that it's like you're really close to just saying, here's tactics and strategies on influence. Then I have spiritual philosophy, then kind of a sort of a biography history type section. And one of the things I realized when I put all this thing together is I realized that all of these books are influence books. All of them. Now, maybe because
that's your box.
I'm now down that tunnel vision, but I see, well, like, okay, what is the purpose of these books?
Yeah.
The Republic.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of the Republic? They could have had that conversation and just left it at that conversation.
Yeah.
In theory, or they wrote a book. Okay, what's the purpose of the book? Or the text is to get it out and get it wide. Why would you even want to get that thing out and wide? Well, you might want to influence the beliefs and the thoughts of other people. You've done a lot of the thinking. You're showing kind of the math of the thinking, and you got it there, and you might adopt it as like some good ideas, or maybe build on top of it. But they are influencing you to believe the things in the book. They wouldn't have wrote the book.
Yeah.
The people who are publishing it, even that, of some sense, they're trying to influence you. I mean, they're influencing you by going like, hey, this is the book you want. You got to give me money in order to get it. And you've got to take the action of giving you the small thing that's irrelevant for the thing that's like matters.
You could probably divide it into influence, educate, or entertain as far as books.
Sure.
With,
yeah, I agree.
Being, we want to change the way you think, or the things you think about, your philosophy.
Yep.
The core of who you are. And the educate being, we're going to teach you practical skills within a particular domain. And then entertain just be, we're going to help you kill some time.
Yeah.
It's, and this then
help you kill some time. Yeah.
More in the educate category, because they're not, even those you're going to have sneaky philosophy sneaking in, like Unscripted, for instance, is going to have, philosophy about money, right? Which is going to be influencing you.
Yep.
Then, like you're saying, a lot of the business books are strictly just little tactics that you're using for different things. So they're more
blown up into much larger,
thicker books. So,
nearly entire philosophies baked around. I mean, what's the one like the one thing? That's probably like that probably might be the shining example.
We can give you one sentence, or we can give you this entire book wrapped around that one one sentence.
It's so meta, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's about the one thing. It's like, okay, gotcha.
1,000 words about one thing.
Which, I mean, isn't that City Slickers?
Yeah.
Was it number 1 or 2? I can't remember.
It was the first one.
First one.
Yeah.
One thing. I mean, it's like, it's good. I mean, it fluffs your thinking and stuff like that. But what were you talking about? I mean, there was a point to all this.
The influence.
Yeah, you were talking about
Groupthink.
Groupthink.
Yep.
Okay, so now the games that these damn business people play, they'll do stuff. So okay, and I get it, but I just got a commentary about it. That it, like, depending on how you're thinking from a marketing perspective, you got to raise the price of the book up way high so that, like, this is the real value of the book. So you just say, hey, it's $500, and it's like, it's true, but you really need to sell the book for $500 because you could literally just go to KDP and they're going to print it for, and then you buy it and it costs them like maybe $5 to print that book.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like, oh no, it's really $500. And it's funny because I have one of those books.
Yeah. Oh, I do too.
I have that Release Your Brakes book.
Yeah.
Which, I bought it because Dan Pena said it, and that shit was like $200.
Yeah, I was eyeing that Release Your Brakes book. I'm like, how did he get a copy of that? Because I bought it on PDF from the original publisher because it's like $12.
Yes, exactly.
Because I was not going to pay $500 for that little tiny book. It's
and what's funny about it is it's definitely it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of funny thinking about it that, like, okay, well, what is that book? That book is, like, I think just somebody recording his seminars.
Yeah.
So he's giving, like, seminars, then transcribe it out, maybe fluff it a little bit to make it a little bit more whatever.
It's an interesting technique he developed.
Apparently, that's also what Transformations is.
Mm.
They were just giving seminars on hypnosis.
Yeah.
Is that the origins of hypnosis?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm. It goes way back.
It's just their tactics.
Yes.
Or their technique of doing it.
A lot of those you get a brilliant practitioner, genius practitioner.
Yeah.
And then they'll be like, okay, we got to build an entire system around him, and then he'll die, and then there'll be an organization that's still pitching his stuff. But there's that, you want to talk about a lack of growth.
Yeah.
That's totally those systems.
But what's so funny about that? All of those books and all those organizations, they're about growth.
But they're not. So as soon as the founder's gone, they become these sclerotic bureaucracies that are still pitching exactly the same shit for as long as they possibly can. And because they're not geniuses, they don't dare to touch the material.
It's so funny. How the hell does Sun Tzu be so sticky?
But nobody rewrote Sun Tzu, and they didn't set up the Sun Tzu Foundation to push the ideas of Sun Tzu.
Yeah, right.
For the next 500 years.
If you worried about the CCP taking over the U.S. government, might be worried about the CCP inserting their Sun Tzu into the military tactics and strategies. It's been on the must-read list probably since, like, the day of the first...
Since 1,000 years ago.
Yes.
Well, basically since the West came in contact with the East for Westerners. But, yes.
It's so dumb.
Yeah, the sclerotic organization thing makes me crazy because it's just like, okay, so, yeah, this guy was a genius, and he came up with this fantastic system.
Oh, yeah.
And it worked in 1970. But does it still work? And a lot of them do because they're based on basic.
Yeah, I would call them relatively timeless.
Right, but they're at the same time because they're not being reworked. They're not being said in the language that like a modern will get. Like.
Oh yeah.
So that unless you can put your brain back when they were written and you go, oh, this is what he's talking about there. He's like relating this to that. Then you're missing out on a lot of the content.
I see. Well, this kind of goes to what you were saying yesterday, that no one has any experiences. I feel like when you read these kinds of books, or say it's even the Bible, it's only relevant if you've done something.
Yes, absolutely.
And like you're saying, the seeds. Well, why would you give a parable that includes something like the parable of the sower? Well, everybody at the time had experience Oh, I've thrown seed on
Mm-hmm.
gravel before, and it kind of pops up and it doesn't get very
but you only
big.
get
And
a couple of crappy plants. No, it's definitely that where you have to have an echo of the thing inside of you. So this
oh,
it has to respond to it, and if there's nothing inside of you for it to respond to, if you're an empty shell because you've never experienced anything, then there's nowhere for that to stick. Which, I mean, if you look at like memory techniques, it's the same thing where they talk about like putting hooks in your mind. So the more experiences you have, the more these memory hooks you have, so that you can associate new
oh
things
yeah, yeah,
with
yeah,
those things.
yeah.
But if you don't have any of those,
How does like this is something that's kind of challenging. So I work with this kid, and he is probably 22, 23, and he's now working at a giant corporation.
Okay.
So very, very, vanilla. How does a kid like that actually go do something? Because he doesn't do the closest that he does anything is he's doing jujitsu.
Right.
And the one thing I'll say
That's
about
good.
jujitsu is you either win or you lose.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about that. And he's gotten his ass kicked many times. So he knows this.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you go out and do something? And I was borderline telling him, like, you should probably like go join the Marines or something. Because then you're like going to go travel the world. You're going to do a bunch of dangerous stuff. There was like something I said. There's like, oh, that sounds so dangerous. I'm like, no, it's not. This is the least dangerous thing you could do is anything we're doing here. The most crazy thing I could possibly do at work here is say something politically incorrect or something.
Yeah.
Which is just dumb.
Well, that's kind of the other side of it, though, which is
no one learns anything in these businesses.
If you have a pure safety orientation, then you can't actually have real experience because you'll never do anything that's pushing your edge of experience. It's so you have to be unsafe.
Here's what other people do. They travel.
Yes.
But that still that still seems safe to me.
There's two different kinds of travel, though. You can do travel, which I used to see all the time, which is people that like hop from one 5-star hotel to another in the country, so you never experience it at all.
Oh yeah.
Or you can do real travel where you like stay where the locals stay and eat what the locals eat, and wander the back roads that none of the tourists are on. And that's a totally different experience. And you experience that whole thing in a different way, in a way that is not oriented towards you as a consumer, which is, and I've slept in some shitty places in the third world that were like scary. And I've eaten some scary things.
You know what? Maybe that's actually a better way of looking at it. That you really should. What's going on there, Hazel?
You can't see him.
Traveling to a third world country.
Yeah.
I think that is that definitely immediately does it, because then you're gonna come back and be like, I can't believe the kind of stuff I saw. It's so dangerous. They had a kid standing on the back of a motorbike as it was driving down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see all sorts of unsafe stuff going on. You go, oh, look at that electrical line up there. It looks like a rat's nest. That doesn't look safe. And you plug your iPhone 13 into a socket that's probably going to fry half the electronics because somebody's cook stove is hooked up to the same thing. And, you start getting a little bit more reality in your life.
There's somebody here locally.
Yeah.
That, again, they got like all bent out of shape about like the lack of building codes. I'm like, bro, look at the fucking buildings around here. Mm-hmm. But again, if their eyes can't see the full gradient, their gradient is about this big. Mm-hmm. And the real gradient, maybe it goes up a little bit like that. The real gradient goes all the way that way.
No, it's almost unfathomable unless you do it. It's like, I mean, the thing I think about is people will like watch these, documentaries or YouTube or this kind of stuff about, like what a Filipino slum is like. And it's like, well, you know what? You can't smell it when you're watching it on TV. And when you're sitting in your comfortable chair there in your air-conditioned space, you don't know how sticky you can be after like hiking through that area.
Oh yeah.
And how much like grime can be on your body from like all those vehicles that are spewing out all that diesel smoke.
Oh.
All the cooking fires that are like putting like oils into the air so that you're just grimy and there's dirt stuck to you and it stinks. And that's a completely different experience. That's a whole body experience. It's not just things go into your eyeball and then you think thoughts with your head. it's your body is feeling this place, you know, and it's not a good thing. Like it is definitely teaching you things through your whole body.
Well, I'd imagine it's doing something like. Well, the funny thing is if you do that long enough, you're not even going to notice it anymore.
No, if you're there long enough, you just adapt to that being like normal. But it's also like a wider experience. Then you come back and you go, wow, it is so comfortable here and it smells so good everywhere. And I don't have to, I mean, we used to go running in the Congo, and part of the fun was like jumping over the sewage ditches, like while we were out running. You know, like you're doing your 3 mile run and you have to like leap these sewage ditches that are like 3 or 4 feet wide and not fall in them.
You definitely don't want to fall in them.
But you also you're holding your breath while you're like jumping over them because they stink so bad.
Oh man.
You know, and it's like 105 degrees out and it's like 98% humidity, and you're like, oh.
Is it dusty over there? Every video I see, it's like
dusty.
it's crazy dusty.
Yeah, I was actually on Google Maps just looking at Brazzaville, which is the capital.
Yeah.
And they still only have like maybe 5% of the roads in that town are paved.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So yeah, there's tons of dust.
So is it dusty because of dirt roads?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's like
yeah.
a humid jungle.
Well, it's dusty because of humans. Because humans like get rid of the vegetation.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
exposed.
I mean, they're constantly scuffling up the ground, so
they're scuffling up the ground. And
weeds can't take hold.
No, there's that correlation they made between like trees and wealth. You know, where a wealthy area you can tell because there's trees, and a poor area there are no trees.
It's what does that say about this neighborhood here?
Well,
there's like 1 or 2 little popsicle trees.
It does say something about it, but I mean, think about that. Think about that with
I know.
in the United States. When you go into an area that has mature trees, like you're like, oh yeah, this is awesome.
Well, you go there and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Your first thing you think is this is an old neighborhood.
Yeah.
But there's this neighborhood and there's many of them.
I mean, if it's put in the 50s, you got 75-year-old trees, so.
Sure.
That's some pretty nice trees.
Where we lived in Louisiana, if you go south of where we were, like into town, and you start to go into Mandeville, there's all these old neighborhoods. You go into them, and you know they got live oaks, which only makes it look even older.
Yep.
But those live oaks are, 50 years old, 60, 70 years old, or something like that. But there's so many of them. It's actually kind of like the neighborhood you're in, where it's hard to grow a garden or anything there because there's so many of these big ass old trees, and they're not pines. They're like live oaks, which is also an evergreen tree. So even in the wintertime, you don't get any sun. But yeah, you go down there, and of course, this is like the nicest neighborhood in the entire parish.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, they got giant old trees. Because then what happens in these areas is then they want to like preserve the look in the field. So then it's like illegal to cut the trees down, or the fines are so ridiculous that you have to have money to cut the tree down.
Yeah.
And that's not even including just paying the person. But I'm trying to remember what it was. It was like something like $30 a ring of the tree or something.
Wow.
Yeah, it was something ridiculous. It's going to cost you a lot of money cutting those trees down.
Well, that says a lot about how much humans value such things.
I mean, it looks nice. You go there and you're just like, whoa, this is really fancy.
Yeah.
And it's just a fucking tree that's sitting there. But to your point, yeah. I mean, we had nice trees here, but they were just poorly placed. And they did probably like everybody else does. Just going to put a tree here.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Just
going
gonna
to
put a tree here.
I want one of these. I want one of those. And it's just like, oh, here's a good spot.
They always plant it like in the middle of a, that's like a rectangle right there. There's this rectangle, there's that rectangle, there's this square that's right here, and then they just plop it right in the middle of these spaces. It's like, that's not the smartest thing.
Yeah.
And the tree that was back behind here, I mean, I'd really like that tree, but
right under the power lines too, though.
By God, that thing was too big. The fact that it would shade the orchard over here for all the way till 1 p.m. is like, that's totally insane.
That's crazy.
And just because it was, I don't know, that thing was at least 50, 60, 70 feet and massive.
Part of the reason the U.S. has all these like beautiful areas and towns with all these big trees and stuff is they actually had a guide that was how to create a beautiful city that they used to here too. and it was like you need to have a pathway, and it needs to be separated from the roadways by trees, and you
Oh.
need to have this much separation.
Is that where
between the
sidewalks came
houses.
from?
Yeah, and it was here's how you create a beautiful place that people want to live, and the this is the I'm gonna malign architects for a second. So
Malign architect.
yeah, so then we got into this thing where everybody needed to express themselves, and they needed to like do their creativity and all this kind of crap,
Oh.
and that like went into architecture, and so
Mm.
architects are now taught that any restriction on what they want to build is wrong because they need to have full creative freedom to build whatever they want, even if nobody else wants it, and which is a really weirdly selfish thing for somebody that's creating something that places where people will live.
Yeah, because they're going to create it one time and they're going to move on.
Yeah, they are. But then they're going to be like, see this round building I created? And it's like, oh, you mean the one that everybody thinks is an eyesore and that leaks? And they're like, yeah, it cost $6 billion to build it. It's like, oh, great, what a triumph.
You should.
So-
There's definitely a couple buildings at Virginia Tech, like the geology building that Christine and I would be in. It was like known as this eyesore, ugly ass building.
I was watching this video the other day, and it was literally on like architectural beauty, and it's like, what do people find beautiful? And it's like, there's actually things like if you ask everybody, they all like the same shit, and they all like the same kind of buildings.
Yeah.
And so he's pointing.
You know what? Probably the number one thing is orderly.
Shapes and forms.
Shapes, sure.
Yeah, of a particular type, recognizable. Ornamentation, and the ornamentation needs to be like plants, animals, or people. On the buildings, and but a lot of it was shape based. There's certain shapes that the human eye likes, So, and the thing that he was pointing out that's pretty funny is he's like,
I would still call that orderly because none of those shapes exist in
It is
reality
order.
or out in nature.
It's human order. It's not natural order, but there's also a mimicking of nature. So you see
sure.
Mandalay set, shapes, and you see like the conch shell circle will show up, and with the golden ratio and that sort of thing, because they're pulling in those.
I'm so skeptical of this golden ratio thing.
I'm not actually. I've done a bunch of furniture based on the golden ratio, and
You think so?
It improves it. Yeah, I've played with like the different shapes, and I see what they're saying and why they came up with it as being this beautiful thing. And what it is it's not the golden ratio is not like some magical thing man created. It's a thing that occurs in nature that they just noticed.
Oh yeah,
and
sure.
copying it. So they're just like, that's what you're responding to. Is you're responding to that natural shape.
I mean, I'm wondering if it's. I mean, if I'm understanding. I mean, the golden ratio really has to do with like the size and scale of things, right?
Yes. Well, it's the ratio of a rectangle, like
Yeah.
the height to the width, and it's a specific ratio. I think it's 1.61.
Oh yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And
Instead of it being.
I think
like
we were
1
looking
to
at this
2,
in like the mobile phones, even sort of
Yeah.
have those shapes. At least some of them.
They try to sometimes. Some people ignore it. If you like see them next to each other, you're like, I like that shape better. It's just your brain picks up on it.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about
it's like
the
catenary arches are the same thing.
something
where
about
it's
the iPhone shape here.
just the
Or
ratio is weird.
yeah, it seems like it is. And maybe I'm just not used to this kind of or iPad.
Yeah.
It seems fatter. And I mean I know that the ratio itself is some particular ratio because I've seen it in these design things that you design for it, and it's like
Yeah,
It's-
that definitely is not golden ratio.
like it's not why you can't widescreen on it. You get black bars on a widescreen because it's too like that.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I mean I don't know if
That's a little more functional.
it might be.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. Feel how light this thing is. This thing's crazy.
Yeah,
It's like insane.
we're in a crazy age of, like I said, we create magical objects now, and everybody's just like, meh, throw it out. I'll get another one.
I was telling Will at the gym, think about how you could go buy, like if you were like, oh, I need a laptop for work or something. You can go on Amazon and buy one for $300. Of course, you can get one cheaper than that, but $300 seems like that's kind of a reasonable amount of money to go throw up for a laptop.
Right.
$300, dude. That's what a graphing calculator used to cost.
Yeah.
And all you got was graphing calculator. This is a laptop. You could write computer programs with that.
So in $1970, you could probably get a good slide rule for the equivalent of $300 today.
One's more intuitive.
Slide rules are pretty cool, actually. But
Yeah.
just as a interesting way to work around not having the technology to create all this crap.
Yeah. I think I actually finally used the word heuristic the other day very, very well. I'm trying to remember what the context was, but somebody was talking about how.
Did you ever read that book?
Which one?
Simple Heuristics That Make Us Smart.
No.
It's pretty interesting.
What's the purpose of that book?
To point out that we have all these mental shortcuts that we use all the time without realizing it. And the positive side of it is it reduces the amount of compute time you need with your mind, which you're always trying to reduce because our brains are so stupidly large.
But does the book as a format improve heuristics?
I think the best thing about it is it causes you to recognize the heuristics you're using, because the downside of a heuristic is it can become a blind spot.
Yeah, of course, because you're naturally going to.
Correct.
Oh, if it's golden rule, then it's good.
Well, that's an example. Or if you think about like the one I look at a lot is like relationships with other people.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh, I like this person. It's like, well, why do you like them? Right? And the answer is there's a bunch of heuristics you're running in your head.
Yeah, I was gonna say because they're your mom.
Well,
they're your parents.
You don't necessarily like them because they're your parents.
Well, no, I mean that's a common thing that somebody will date their spouse or their person is
and
the
what
closer
is
they
that?
are to their parent.
What they're looking at is they're saying, oh, familiar.
Yeah, familiar. Oh, it's
Right?
definitely familiar.
So,
It's safe.
yes.
It's known.
Well, familiar is safe because familiar hasn't killed you in the past. So
I mean, it is true.
yeah, but think about what a terrible heuristic that is.
Well, again, this goes back to what we were talking about.
Yeah.
How can anybody go and do these things?
No, but it takes a lot of conscious effort for you to not do that.
It does take a lot. Well, even going even further, it's actually hard to do these things out here because everything has been made so safe.
Yes.
Like, what would you even do? I guess we could do like we did yesterday, which was like, oh, let's go for a hike. Is this the right way? Well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of it.
Whereas other people are like, oh, whoa, we can't go any further unless we find out the exact correct way. We might die if we keep going. It's like,
I mean, you have to identify your danger that you're trying to overcome. Though, are you overcoming physical danger, or are you overcoming like emotional danger?
I can tell you right now, from having done this enough times, like we were saying on the East Coast, you can't fucking die on a hike unless you're just stupid.
People die on hikes.
Well,
all the time.
Not me.
People on the you wouldn't believe how many people on the Appalachian Trail wander off the Appalachian Trail to take a dump and then don't find their way back to the trail and then die.
Don't they have like any kind of navigational anything?
You would think, but no.
Now,
Danielle is like reads all these stories to me all the time. She's like, oh yeah, another people die on that. I mean, apparently the Appalachian Trail is super deadly, which we're not going to get into the hillbillies killing people on the Appalachian Trail because they keep finding body parts nailed to trees, but that's another thing.
But I mean, I'll say just like in general, yesterday there was zero chance of anything. The only chance of anything was people getting tired of kids making noise.
No, I mean when we went down that one trail, that was my thoughts. I'm like, well, all we have to do is follow the trail back up. The end.
Yeah.
At the car. Now, unless you do something stupid like I'm going to try to save time by going cross country.
Yeah.
If you just follow the trail back, you're good to go. So, not a big deal.
I mean, it's a super known.
Yep.
It's not even like we were like climbing on rocks, and there's not like there's water rushing down. And again, it's like we're talking about like hiking out West Coast. It's not like, oh no, a cloud's coming over. Oh no, we're not prepared for this. Like that just doesn't happen. The worst thing is we come out like a bunch of wet rats that are just like, I'm gonna get back to the car. I'm done.
When Christine made the hail comment, I was like, my brain immediately switched into West Coast. Cascades.
She said hail?
The weather report said there's going to be hail. So my brain goes, crap, I need to bring a whole survival pack.
Even if there was hail, we're underneath evergreen trees.
I didn't know that. I was going to a random trail.
I mean, this is true.
Going.
Now, I mean, this is true. We thought we were going to go visit some balds.
Yeah.
So
that would have been totally different. Exposed the entire time.
Exposed.
Yep.
Yeah, we were not exposed.
No.
We were under deep, multiple layers of cover. But I don't know. It's just one of those things. I mean, What I'm taking.
I'll say that's a type of adventure you don't want, which is some idiot says, "Let's go do something," and you're just like, "Okay," without knowing what the hell you're getting yourself into.
Now, in reality, certainly, I think the person who I'm mocking here, they don't go on any hikes, and this would be perhaps like their first hike. So, of course, you know, you walk down that path. We've done like well over 100 hikes now. Easy.
I'm not saying there was any danger in what we did yesterday.
Well, all I'm referring to is like, you know, when you go out and you go do like we did yesterday, there's a little bit of element of unsafety to it, but it's nowhere near the level that people think it is. And of course, this is the danger that if you don't know what is safe and unsafe, you have no I don't know, protection against it. It's like people going into a combat zone for the first time, and they have no idea what's going on in that country or anything about it. They're at their most vulnerable.
I mean, for your 23-year-old friend, it's not necessarily danger as so much as discomfort, right? Because that's.
Oh yeah.
I think we're more plagued with comfort than we are with unsafety, we'll call it. You know, it's just.
Yeah, I think comfort. I think you're right.
It's because the comfort
plagued
keeps you sitting in this chair in this air-conditioned space. You know, I mean, we're fully safe. Whereas, you know, if you listen to the COVID people, if you left your house during.
Oh yeah.
You would have died instantly, which pushed people further into this like ridiculous comfort thing.
It's totally insane because I flew like 50 times in the middle of 2020.
I know, it's insane.
It's totally insane.
For the first 2 weeks, when nobody knew anything, you could be prudent and like
that would be prudent.
Not come into contact with people. But after that, it's like, I don't see any bodies on the road. Well, on the news, they say everyone's dying everywhere. It's like, well, nobody's dying here, so.
Yeah, where?
Somewhere else. Which, I told you about that, where I was talking to people that are in the north, and they were being told in the news everybody was dying in the south. People in the south, in the news, everybody's dying in the north.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, really? The news is telling you that what's happening is just not happening where you are, but it is happening everywhere else.
What's really crazy, sort of side tangent, but on this same subject, was I saw an article recently that I didn't even know this was a thing because, again, we live in our own echo chamber.
Yes, we do.
And everybody else is living in a different echo chamber. So every now and again, there's like kind of stories that leak over from these echo chambers. And one of which is apparently in the last like year or so, there's been this extreme effort to try to argue why the data shows that there's no flu anymore. That they've actually gone down this road of insanity.
COVID virus killed off the flu virus.
They are said, like, I read the arguments. I'm like, this is so ridiculous.
Yep.
So ridiculous. That was one of the arguments, that it was like the COVID virus is so, you know, it attacks the flu virus. It is so crazy. I mean, you literally, they show the graph. I think it's from like the CDC itself, and it's like, you know,
oh yeah,
then it is flatlined.
Yeah, complete flatline.
It's like, I mean, that was like one of the biggest jokes in the middle of 2020, like late 2020, which was like, oh, the flu just disappeared.
Yes.
So here was another thing, actually.
Top killer.
Here was one of the things that they mentioned, and again, I don't know if any of this stuff is true, but that I don't. How can anyone? I mean, what you just said. How can you do it if everything is out there and never here?
Yes.
So supposedly, all of the flu testing equipment was unavailable in 2020. Supposedly.
Sure. And
so they couldn't test for it, and apparently this little PCR test that's like ineffective for testing for flu or something like that.
It was ineffective. Period, as shown by all subsequent studies, that it didn't work at all. But let's base policy on it.
They're getting. I mean, watching the politics, man. They're getting slayed over this stuff.
They should.
They're trying to. They're bringing. They're always having to answer questions about this stuff, and their answers are so ineffectively bad. They're not even like. They're always just like, that's what the data showed at the time, and it's like, no, it didn't.
It didn't.
It didn't. And then they'll ask a specific question about kind of like the nature of a study, and then they'll misconfuse what they're saying, and they'll talk about some other kind of study. It's like, no, that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we were talking about.
I'm on an individual basis. If you're not like trying to hold anybody to a particular standard for a reasonable reason, all the biblical prohibitions against dealing with fools are what always pops into my mind. You know, like you're just wasting your time and energy talking to these people.
Yeah, this is a hard one.
Away from that, unless, like I said, it's part of your job to like do something about that.
Yeah.
It's just like, don't talk to a fool. It's just a waste of time.
Don't cast your pearls before swine.
Yeah.
And that's a very granular statement, because there are certain people in my household that I should not be casting pearls in front of.
No,
because
it's a waste of time.
They don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. I used to have a friend at work that would mention that kind of stuff all the time, and it's very true.
Mm-hmm.
This guy I was listening to yesterday, that cold case Christianity guy, he was talking about, if you put people on a spectrum in support of an idea, you basically get the hard extremes, which is like they believe it and they don't even want you to talk about it because they already kind of like they're like 100% yes. And when you're talking to them, you're not even all you're doing is like maybe triggering them, but they're not actually listening to you.
Right.
And then there's the far other side, which is like completely anti against it. They're not listening to you because you're also triggering them, and they're just saying whatever. And then there's that middle ground, which is they might listen to you on one side. They're lean towards maybe an idea, and I think that applies for all this. That
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's what the swine is. They're all the way pegged on the other end, and at the end of the argument he's making is he's trying to empower Christians to be able to go and do their discipleship. So how do you do that? Okay, well, first know that there's this swine type out there, and don't talk to them.
Yeah. Well,
unless they're like maybe family or something like that, then you can.
It's back to the soil argument too, right?
It is a soil argument.
Is it good soil or is it stony soil? Where it's just like.
Okay, and taking this further,
yep.
What soil would you bother? It's bad soil. In which situations would you want to convert this bad soil into good soil?
Well,
I'd say zone 0 and zone 1 soil, right? The stuff that's right outside your house.
Yeah.
It's like it's not very good,
right.
So you need to improve it. Well, how do you do that? Well, it's really simple. Time. You got to throw a lot of seeds. You got to get a lot of bad fruit. You got to have to do a lot of mulching. You got to bring a bunch of materials. It's very costly.
Yeah, it is very costly.
You can't do that with everybody. You can't go.
No.
I can't. Some of our friends here who maybe are having a hard time growing, it's like I can throw some ideas about seeds at them, and then they can go and try to do that zone 1 cultivation. But I cannot zone 1 cultivate zone 5. That's just it literally doesn't work from an energy perspective.
6 inches of compost the entire world.
Well, you only can if you're taking 6 inches of compost from somewhere else and you just dump it
and moving it. It's got to be excess from that other place.
Yeah, I'm like totally convinced that, and this is part of the intuition behind how to structure sanctuary leadership, which I'm not doing a very effective job at it, but that I only think these certain truths come from something like doing agriculture. And it's just really simple. Like, again, and maybe this could be a good lesson. Like, here's crappy soil, and we keep crappy. And then okay soil, and then good soil. And then you plant in all of them, and you're like, oh, man, this is so much better. I mean, it's not until you see and you work with these kinds of stuff that you start to gain an appreciation for, this is really complicated. There is a lot of complexity out there. And I definitely think that, for sure, I've identified and seen that people's heuristics with other people are broken. They don't work. They're ineffective. And it could be the case, some people talk about socialization. That might be part of it.
Yeah, they're not consciously chosen.
I think they're trying to do the heuristics that work on their parents with the rest of the world. And these people, if I'm going to point the finger, these people have convinced everybody, because it's in their best interest, to create environments to cater to that.
Yeah.
And then I believe that has then percolated out to society wide, because when they go to those places, it is catered. And so then they have an expectation, and which, it could be a chicken and the egg. Which one came first? Was it society? I don't know. But it definitely came from the parents. Now, why are the parents so ineffective? That's something I don't like. Where did the helicopter mom come from? Does anyone know? I mean, it's California for sure, but that's what it looks like to me. But where did the helicopter mom come from?
Well, I mean, helicopter mom comes from wealth, right? So
that's what I assume.
if you don't have a person who doesn't have anything better to do, then they can spend all of their time doing that.
I mean, that's what it looks like to me. If you got time to go and you look at these things, but I think that's partially true. I mean, maybe if there's not something like truly pressing, but on the same token, I've kind of seen that some people are intentionally choosing that over other things. So
yeah,
you're supposed to be being productive and doing this thing, but it's like instead of that, you've kind of focused on this.
But I think that's like obedience to culture. So what you always have is you have the less successful, like the middle class, striving to copy the most successful, the upper classes.
Yeah.
But they don't actually have the resources to do it. So they're mimicking what they're seeing, or they're stretching themselves to try to do the same thing. So they'll do something like, oh, well, to get into Harvard, you need to have 63 clubs that you belong to and have 2 sports. And then you need to be like, getting a 6.0 GPA, which I have no idea how people do that, but apparently it's a thing.
It is a thing.
And then you can go to this, Ivy League school that so the parents kill themselves, put themselves in debt, run themselves ragged, trying to get their kid to jump through all these hoops so they get to Harvard. But that's the middle class parent, whereas the upper class parent just goes, oh, we're going to buy you a new gymnasium, Harvard. And then their kid goes off to Harvard without them having to run around or do anything else. So it's this, the immigrant tiger mom is probably the, quintessential view of that, where it's like, we're going to sacrifice all of this generation for the next generation to try to get them into a higher socioeconomic status.
So here's the real question. Do they actually even move to a higher economic status by going to these universities?
Well, the answer now is probably no.
I doubt it.
But see, that's the thing, is that the mimicry is mimicking the form, not the reality of the thing.
Yeah.
So it's, the children aren't being taught to be rich kids. They're being taught to go to look like rich kids, like wear the rich kid clothes, go to the rich kid college, but their thoughts aren't rich kid thoughts. Their thoughts are middle class thoughts, because that's what they're getting from their families. And in theory, when they go off to that Ivy League school and rub elbows with rich people, then they're supposed to get those rich people thoughts, but instead, I think most of the time they just end up working for the rich people, which and maybe the next generation. I mean, if they're
when I think of Ivy League schools, I think of people who go into the same corporations as everyone else.
Yeah.
And at best,
yeah,
they might get an extra leg up in a job or something. Like, what is it? Harvard? I'm trying to think what university. Maybe it's Ivy League schools in general. I mean, the primary job is that, the desired job is McKinsey and Company.
Yep.
Something like that. And it's like, I'm sure they make a little bit of money, but
that
you're still an employee.
Yeah.
You didn't create anything.
You didn't go to entrepreneur college. So, I mean, Daniela was talking about how half the people that she did go to Ivy League schools, and she was like, half of them, they were just there because their families wanted them to have a degree, but it was all understood that they were just going to take over the family business.
Yeah.
Which was a multi-million-dollar business already. So they could pretty much do anything they wanted at college,
Yeah.
So and they're not going to work at McKinsey and Company ever.
Oh yeah, sure.
But the, helicopter mom who made her kid do 8,000 things as a child and sent them off finally, they're going to get that McKinsey position. And
it's so great to be global
vice president.
Global influence.
Yes. That's
and the global influence is over corporations.
Yeah.
My thinking on this, and this may be a shallowish thinking on it. Whenever I look at corporations, and of course I mean by a corporation, I mean like some big entity, tons of employees and all this kind of stuff, I just see an organization that is employees.
They look to me from top to bottom, and I mean top from at least CEO down. I don't know if the boards look this way because I don't have visibility in that, but they look like employees.
Yeah.
Even the CEO and all of them, they all look like employees. They have an employee mindset.
Yeah.
It's this like I saw it at my MBA. I see it all the time, that, you know, people talk about like class in terms of money, but there's clearly class in thought and thinking about, okay, are you starting your own business? Okay, you're in your own business. Even if you think of a business as a job, you know, you still think kind of a job mindset about a business.
Right.
Even those people, they're still thinking about that entire pathway differently than everybody else that's in a corporation, where they're thinking about things like, oh, I'm going to hire people for my system that's doing something for other people, whereas the people in the corporation, even if they were hiring people, they're thinking about it in terms of like, we hire people in a corporate, like maybe it's that mimicry thing that the reason why they're doing the thing, it originally was created by the entrepreneur or an entrepreneur type who leads this thing into existence, whether they get very far or not. And then everybody inherits these micro behaviors that they never earned and have this distinctly corporate characteristic about it.
I think you argue task versus vision.
I don't disagree with that.
So your HR person doesn't have a vision of
Nope.
getting the best minds and the best people for the company. They have a vision of, I need 6 bodies within the next 2 months.
Or 600.
Or 600.
I mean, when I look at like the kinds of numbers that they're like trying to do, you know, they're building a strategy around. Like when I think about a strategy, I think a whole company strategy. When they're talking about a strategy,
level, they need 600 because their people are going to be 15% effective. And
yes,
they know that out of that 600, they're going to fire 200 of them in 90 days. And I need to get another 200 to replace those because those are going to be completely worthless.
yeah, these are at scales I do not comprehend. So I think about like, okay, if you're, but again, it's like the nature of, okay, I'm thinking building strategy on the entire business concept as a strategy, and they're building, they're applying that. I'm not saying mine, I'm putting more energy or effort in, not saying that, but it's like the span and scope of what they're thinking, it's couched within a particular lens. And so they're applying the same amount of energies and intensities in that, but it's normally over this larger scale, call it this kind of peanut butter spread. And I think about how the hell are they going to bring 600 people in to a technical field? Where are they getting these 600 people from? And the real answer is that bar drops low enough. Like, okay, there's 600 people out there that we're going to hire, or that are ready to be hired. And in order to get to that 600, we got to drop that bar to there.
Yeah.
And then, like you're saying, you bring them in and they're 15% effective.
Yeah.
Because how else are you going to find these? Because for me, I have to think of in terms of people who are actually effective. They don't think like that. They don't. I mean, those terms aren't even like considered. So they go like, how do you measure? How do you determine their effectiveness? For me, a lot of it's going to be very intuitive. It's going to be, you know, are there things about this person that I can work very well with? Do I think they're kind of like a fit for this thing? You know, the nature of where they're going. I might actually play a lot of emphasis on, you know, tiny individual people. They're just going to throw like a coding test at them. It's like all of your best people are going to fail that coding test. Yeah. The only people who are going to jump it are your university students who are like prepared for notation tests.
Well, I mean,
I can't even believe Microsoft gives this kind of crap.
Those big corporations, I think they're playing a statistical game.
They are playing a statistical game.
Because they can't actually have real relationships with any of those people.
They can't have real relationships with anything.
No, because there's just too many. I mean, just straight Dunbar's number, you can't possibly know those 600 new hires. And that's 600 new hires, so you brought in 10,000 people to get to those 600 hires? Or you went through 10,000 resumes? How can you possibly have any connection with any of those people? And
I mean, and what we're doing right here, I'd say I'm going to say air quotes, justifying what they're doing. I mean, these are the techniques in order to. Yeah, there's a reason why they're doing it. And it's not, I'm even critiquing it, but it is one of those things. But the way that they think about it, that's employee mindset.
Yes, it is.
The way that they have to think about it, like, oh, we're just going to bring in a bunch of other numbers. It's like, even the entrepreneur who has to go and do those kinds of things, they're still thinking, I'm going to get motherfucking paid at the end of this. And I'm thinking about the fact that, you know, I'll never forget this video I watched of Alex Ramosi talk about some of his worst business mistakes. And he had some advice from some mentor that, you know, once you're moving into like a mid-sized company, you have to really focus on the operational side. So, you know, his skill set is like sales and marketing and fulfillment, and then the glue between that would be operations. So that's the HR and the IT and all that. So he spent all of his time and energy at that, and he basically sank his whole company because. And what's funny is most employees are in that middle ground.
Right.
That's where they sit, and they just do their, you know, they move the paper to here to there, and that's it. They don't serve like any actual customers.
TPS report.
Yeah, they have to actually be told about the customer, and like,
Yes.
you know, and then in these books are like, make a good organization. You gotta bring the customer into the operations, and it's like every time that you're filling out the TPS report, you got to be thinking about what the customer wants. The person who wrote that is a salesperson.
Yeah. Well, somebody who actually might come into contact with a customer.
Yeah, and they know this intuitively because if they think like this, they're going to be totally unsuccessful.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have that with programmers. Alrighty.
What do you?
I definitely had that with programmers where they didn't even understand that their managers were their customers of their code. They were like, I'm creating this code so it exists in the universe.
Oh yeah, sure.
And it's like, no, you're creating this code because your manager said he needs this because the sales team needs that.
Oh yeah.
So, which really you need to cut out that middleman and go back to
Dude, it's totally unnecessary.
go straight to the customer if you can get a coder that can talk to a customer and find out what it is they actually want instead of getting this 2 levels of telephone before you're actually doing the thing to those people, because you know what fun that introduces.
Oh, of course it does. I mean, they're going to then go like, I mean, it's, you know, evaluating a sales funnel, and if I were to show it to you, which is why I haven't really, even if I want to do it, I know how pointless it is to show you the sales funnel because you're not even sort of in the demographic for it. No. Do you like it? Oh, I think it looks pretty good. I should probably shit can it. I should probably get rid of it because it's totally irrelevant. Yeah. So if a manager's going like, well, I really think that the button should be over there, like, not relevant. No. But that's what happens because at the end of the day, they do work for the manager. Yes. That is the actual customer. Yep. For them, it is the actual customer. Their customer is not, and that's the problem with these organizations. Yeah. Hence why, you know, any of these companies, the people who are sort of smart at those companies, they just go and buy products where they had developers that were talking, and they don't build their own. They'll just go buy it because that product was actually built for customers. Yes. Whereas if they try to do it, it ain't gonna happen. No. There's something I was gonna say about this. Again, about this kind of entrepreneur mindset, I don't know how to describe it. Like I've come to say, oh, I remember now. It was Alex Ramosi. He was talking about how he was talking to this HR person, and this HR person wanted to start a study, and what they were studying was something about, like, I remember now. It was about fairness in pay. So pay discrepancies within the company. Right. So he's like, okay. So he goes, spends like $20,000-$30,000 or something on this survey, and then got this understanding, and basically then acted on the survey. You know, so to me that reads like he probably empowers his people to like go make decisions. And what ended up happening was the person then raised everyone's pay who had like high pay, and I think if you had a higher pay, you kept it, but then brought up everybody else's pay to the market average. So they did this market average survey, and then they found out there, and then they raised it up there, and then, you know, they're looking at the end of this project. It's like, okay, so what did you do? It's like, well, we studied this, and then, you know, the end results, we did that. So it's like, okay, so what you're telling me is, I paid $100,000 for a survey, and then now I've increased my my overhead on employees by like 40%. What's the return on this? Because it's like many of them were fine with the amount of money that they were making,
Right.
but now they're making more money. Like, that's great.
Sure, I'll take more money.
Yeah, why not? I mean, who
Yeah.
wouldn't?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden now he's just like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yes. It should be called the How to Increase Your Overhead Study.
And that for that person, they don't understand.
No.
They don't understand what he's saying at all.
No.
You
No,
two,
because they're doing
go.
their little task.
yeah.
Their little task is equity and fairness.
I mean, and I guess that's like maybe they were thinking like employee effectiveness or satisfaction or something like that. But that's not. That's not like.
Would increase, which that's the other thing is you get a lot of magical hand waving about that kind of stuff. Where it's like, well, if everybody feels it's fair, there'll be more output. And it's like, how do you know that?
Yeah, no, you got to measure the
Are you
difference.
measuring that?
And it might be, hey, we increased by this amount, and or we increase the expenses by this much, and we increase the output by this much, and it may not be linear, but hopefully it's $1 more than that, and that would be a necessary and requirement trade to upgrade the company to get to a higher efficiency or
Yeah,
effectiveness.
I'm gonna make a business statement though. That would be the worst test ever.
What's that?
That's a test that you can't reverse. So like.
Oh yeah, no,
If
yeah,
you
it's
go,
very true.
Oh, I'm going to spend another $100,000 on advertising to see if we get more revenue. Well, if you don't spend the $100,000 the next month.
Yep.
But if you up your employees' salaries,
Yeah. See, this is
you can't back it back
this is
off. if you
this
don't
is
get any
why
outcome
all the
from it.
corporations have this totally clueless.
Yes.
And the only reason they can get away with it is because of the gravity that they have within society itself. There's this giant snowball that's rolling down, and all of them are rolling down at the same time.
They are.
So
but
when-
they're also exploding at the same.
Well,
time.
that is obvious.
Yes.
Hence why, like now their focus is on everything that does not return $1.
Correct.
In fact, you could say in the last couple months we've seen that their focus has costed them 20% of their whole company.
Billions and billions of dollars. Yes.
And that's just one example. And there's so many of them are doing it.
There are.
It's like, dude, did you which business book up here says that you should put foreign flags in your organization?
Yeah.
And then propagandize people. It's probably that book that's over there in the influence category. It's
like-
probably this one right here that I haven't read that I would actually like to read.
Which one?
Political Behavior in Organizations.
Oh, okay. Probably.
I mean, to me, it's totally insane. It's like, dude, why are we talking about politics and when we're talking about how are you supposed to increase your market? Well, who's your market?
Well, it's like Disney, which is like they bought 3 mega brands, spent literally trillions of dollars on them, and then arguably have ruined all of those brands.
Which ones are you talking about?
They bought Star Wars, and they bought the MCU, and
MCU?
the what do you call it? The comics, all the
Marvel.
superhero movies. Marvel.
Yeah, Marvel.
They bought Marvel.
I don't think by any stretch of imagination I would say they ruined Marvel.
People would argue with you.
That's fine.
Since they took over Marvel.
Well, I don't know anything. I also don't know
There's
anything.
not been a good Marvel movie.
I don't.
So.
That's.
Uh-huh.
I think that's.
You think that's hyperbole?
I think that's nonsense.
All right.
Now I'll say
I've
I
heard
don't
this, but I
know
argue with
what
you.
I do not know what their comic books look like,
Mm.
which is probably a relevant barometer to the destruction of the brand.
Yes.
But I would disagree significantly on that. I don't agree.
No.
I've seen all of them. Well, there might be one or two that I've missed.
All of them. Yes.
I definitely am not watching the minor side ones.
Yes.
But I mean, before they bought it, they were like, okay. Then they bought it. I mean, an example would be.
We're saying post Infinity War. So, post Infinity War.
What are you talking about? They had before that. What are you talking about?
Well, they did, but since then, they. Meh.
Oh, I mean, that's a different topic.
Yes. I'm not saying they didn't make any money on any of the Disney products or didn't make any money on the MCU. I'm
Yeah.
saying that, like, in the last 5, 6,
Okay,
7
yeah.
years,
No, that's
literally everything
that's a
they've
different
come
topic.
out with has been like.
No, that's a different topic.
Has there been a good Disney movie?
Well,
that's
no.
come out in 10 years?
At the end of the day, the third of the Avengers movie, that was their climax. For 100% sure, they had all the people from all the movies in there, and they did one giant epic battle.
Yes.
I mean, I remember leaving the theaters being completely drained.
Yeah.
Because they had tried to tap on every imaginable motion and beat me in submission.
Every movie since then.
Ever since then.
Like,
no, I'll agree. But you could say now I will say in the last few years it's definitely
yeah.
I mean that's for sure. Like Pixar, they've been with Disney for like for almost their entirety. Pixar up until a couple years ago still super high quality, which I don't know when that stopped, but
yeah.
I mean, it was,
Go back.
I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago. For sure, it's probably roughly around there. But I mean, I just think about like this like, for example, Budweiser. I would be okay from like a business perspective if they're looking at like they're going to go capture market share. There's like unserved parts of the market.
Yes.
And then they're going to like, well, we're going to change our brand a little bit to try to adapt to that market. I don't see anything necessarily wrong with that because they're trying to expand, and that may alienate their current customers. That's a hard choice and choice you got to make. But when you're like, we're going to go after this tiny little market, and what we're going to do is we're going to remove our primary market of a gigantic company. It's like, this is the stupidest move ever.
Well,
And it's made by marketing people.
and Gillette,
Gillette?
Yeah, Gillette's whole thing about men are stupid and
Oh no.
that whole crap, where it's just like
No. We live in an era now. It's so obvious how to market. If you want to market to men, you got to have people with beards on it that are like, here's the cedar smell. You got to go towards men or Vikings.
There's 1,000,001 small companies that are doing perfectly fine with
Oh yeah.
marketing men. Yes, but all these large companies are going the times, which is men are dumb, patriarch.
Who's buying and the absurdity of it again? Like, how do you have like marketing is not that difficult? How are there so many people in marketing who don't even understand what their job is? There's a vast majority of people, and or like there's all this pool of people. You want as many people as possible to buy your goods to go do the thing, and what indication are you saying that kind of messaging is getting people to act? When I listen to, for example,
okay, but you're forgetting this, right? So, what the fucking colleges have indoctrinated everyone to at this point is your only job is to change society to be more just and equitable.
That's that book right there.
Yes, that is what every fucking college graduate thinks now. You're not a farmer.
You're not going to do well in business.
You're creating justice and equity. You're not a marketer. You're creating justice and equity. You're not an entertainer. You're creating justice and equity. Right?
Yes.
And what does that do? It poisons every fucking thing because
well, yeah.
What do you want when you go to see a movie? You want to be entertained. You don't want to be trained in justice and equity.
No.
What do you want when you see a commercial? You want to be convinced to buy something.
The absurdity is, the fact that I even have this many books on this shelf or even consider this shelf is because I believe in the virtuousness of these activities to get people what they want.
Yes.
So you're talking about a movie. Give them the movie they want.
Which is an entertaining movie.
An entertaining movie
yes.
that has like the right kind of diversities and varieties, and it's got to have the wah. I don't know if they need that stupid sound anymore.
Diversities and varieties. You could have, there's movies where there's one person in the entire movie and that's it.
Yeah, that Her movie. Yeah. Have you seen that movie?
No.
It's a disturbing movie.
Well, there's a lot of disturbing movies nowadays.
It's clearly like a Netflix kind of movie where you're just sitting alone watching an alone person.
No one is making anything entertaining.
Oh, that's definitely
not true.
That's definitely not true.
All the small entrepreneurial companies, the only way they can compete is to give the audience what they want, right? But the giant companies, they're just like, we're gonna shove this shit sandwich down your throat whether you want it or not.
Well, and then claim that's what people want. And it's like, dude, who are you talking to?
No, nobody wants that. No, everybody wants a shit sandwich shoved down their throat. It's like, no, I don't.
I think it almost looks like everybody who has any experience retired.
It could be.
It's like they definitely have no power. So they had to have retired. And then now it's just like a ton of people that don't know anything.
They retired, okay, or it's my boomer theory, which is the boomers ruined the fucking world and stole everything from everyone. And then as they're getting old and they have their giant pile of gold, now they're like, and I want to feel good about it. So now I'm going to do good things for the world.
Oh, I see.
As they're leaving the planet. So now they're like shoving shit tons of money into ways to save the planet, both social and
Oh, I
et
see.
cetera,
Yeah.
as they sit on their giant pile hoard of gold.
So is that sort of indicative of the fourth turning, that it's like even the previous people are trying to be heroes, couch heroes?
Well, it's
I actually would have to go back
I
and
know this recording isn't going out. I know a lot of extremely successful boomer types sitting on their giant pile of gold that constantly all they talk about is all the ways they're going to help the world with their giant pile of gold.
You're running out a lot of time.
That they looted from the world and destroyed the world doing, and now it's like, but we found a library with the stream that we polluted permanently. It's just like, yeah, you've got this fucking backwards. It's not the way you do it. You don't destroy the world and then take your little pile, your hoarded pile, and rebuild a little tiny bit of it and then call it good. It's just, I mean, I get it. You were fucking stupid and you did this stupid thing.
Yeah.
And now this is the best you can do. Okay, fine. Pour all your resources into it.
Man, this next 10 to 20 years is going to be so interesting.
Oh, it's going to be crazy.
It's going to be chaos everywhere. I mean, it's already happened. It's already on its way.
Yep.
And it's just ripples going everywhere, and the fact that everybody's in an echo chamber, now everybody, I mean, even in like one organization, they're all receiving their information from different sources.
Yeah.
It's just going to, and then they're going to try to like clamp down, and that's only going to confirm various entities, whether or not that's even a reasonable way to view what they're doing. That's how it's going to be viewed. Oh man, it's super interesting.
Yeah.
But I do believe from that, a lot of people are going to start to come into contact with reality, and all of a sudden I do think that there's going to be the ever more, because I've heard it of people in the last, since COVID, which to me, I totally missed the boat on that. Call me a crappy entrepreneur. That I should have been immediately selling myself as the grow your own food guy.
Yes.
I should have been like killing it in 2020, but I'm sitting out in timeout or during that time. I should have been selling fruit trees. I can't even believe it. I wouldn't even have one.
You're not the only one. That was a giant pile of money was dumped on the world. Like, let's double the money supply.
Oh yeah.
And
Well,
all trickled away into like the usual cracks.
The reason why I mention it is because all of a sudden, so many people became conscious of, I need to take care of our actual needs.
Yes.
And I don't think that trend's going to change.
No, I mean, it will probably die down, but you'll have a hardcore contingent that will continue. So, I mean, that's what happened in 2008. It was a wake-up call to a lot of people, but a bunch of those people went back asleep, and then they were blindsided by COVID too.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
But some people still.
I don't.
awake,
Yeah,
so.
I'm definitely cautious about whether or not people have gone to sleep, because I'm not seeing it, because there's too much craziness going on that I don't think that are being piped their way, that
Well, it's like.
they're staying woke.
The crazy though is it's like somebody stirring an anthill with a stick,
Yes.
and they just keep stirring. So it's just ants running around crazy in every direction. But
Yeah.
there's not anything being done. It's just a lot of crazy
I
running around in circles.
definitely think that makes a lot of sense, that analogy of the stirring the ants.